Welcome everybody back to another 2023 NFL Draft Special with Landon Oliver here with my guy Jack Guiley, ready to get into this. One of the bigger positions, in this draft that could possibly be needed for the Colts. I'm super excited to say here before we get into it. If you enjoy the content, if you've enjoyed all of our other videos, make sure to please like and subscribe. If you're watching on Twitter, make sure to like the Blue Stable. Make sure to follow Jack, follow myself. And if you're watching on Facebook, make sure to give the channel a like as well. And, comment on some defensive linemen that you think the Colts should have their eyes on as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and drop the live comments. We could do some questions if you have any questions. They don't even have to pertain necessarily to the defensive lineman, but you got any draft questions you want me and Jack to answer at the end of the show, we'll set aside a little bit of time for that as well. So first off, how you doing, man? How's it going?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Doing wonderful. A lovely Friday. The week is over. We're heading into the weekend. Super excited. Unfortunately, I do have to work tomorrow, but I do have Sunday off, so get to enjoy some lovely weather. But how's you ready for this? You ready for the D line group?
Yeah, really excited to get into some of these guys. We got a variety of different dudes. Again, like we kind of alluded to the other day, not all the top consensus guys. No Tyree Wilson, no Will Anderson we're going to be covering here, but maybe some guys the Colts will target here, maybe day 2, day 3, just to kind of add to that pass rush group that they're currently building, that they keep adding to. Chris Ballard has consistently shown that he likes to do that. So maybe we'll find one of the guys that he'll draft here. Talk about him.
Yeah, and also with a lot of these guys too. So we have some interior defensive linemen, we have some edge rushers as well, and we really kind of focus on guys that fit what the Colts look for. So namely, guys that attended the Senior Bowl, guys that were possibly team captains at their where they played college football at. Not only that, but guys with like higher RAS scores as well, that test well, that the Colts kind of look to take shots on there at the combine. And we even have some smaller school guys that you might not have heard of to go over as well. But a good group of guys. We got 5 names for you, and then we'll drop some other names at the end of the show that we won't have film on this episode, but that we think they could also possibly be on the Colts radar. So before we get started, I just want to kind of like I do every video, I'm just curious, how do you view this defensive line class, pretty much after the consensus round 1 guys?
Yeah, again, there's a lot of talent here. There's a lot of guys that nobody are talking about. I'm sure I'll get into some of them here at the end of the video too. Some of the guys we're not even going to talk about right off the bat. But yeah, a lot of talent here, a lot of freak athletes. It seems like that's the norm now every year. And it just seems like every, pass rushers are getting smaller and smaller. We see guys coming out 240, 250, whereas 10 years ago, that would have been seen as impossible. So, you got guys like Nolan Smith testing as like the best edge rusher ever, running the fastest 40 time, but he's also playing up below 240. Just some very athletic guys. Not all of them are going to hit, but, it's just interesting to see kind of how the body type for pass rushers is just continually changing in this kind of designated pass rusher role that a lot of guys are, starting to fill just to get after the quarterback on third downs. So we're going to talk about a few of those guys as well that can develop maybe into that because some guys, they just don't have that weight to be able to hold up in the run game against big offensive linemen. So.
Yeah, for sure. And, we've seen a lot of these smaller guys come in and have success. Even last year, or the last few years, like one of the main guys at the pass rush position in the NFL, Hassan Reddick, is another one of those smaller type, 6'2", 6'3", really explosive pass rushers kind of you see coming out. And, of course, everybody would love to have, Myles Garrett and those type of guys that are just freaks, that are, they do have the size, they do have the length, but they also have the explosion and the athleticism. But unfortunately, unless you're picking, in the top 5 and one of those guys are available at your spot, you're probably not going to get one of those type of guys. But there are some really good prospects we're going to go over. And we're going to start off first here with a guy that is more on the interior of the defensive line, another really athletic guy, and that is Matsy Smith out of Michigan. And I'm just curious to get your thoughts on a guy like that because we see the explosion he plays with. And really, like Michigan is just such an odd defensive line. They
Mhm.
consistently, like, they're just they play a lot of their guys, like their edge rushers on the interior, a lot of stunts and stuff like that. But a guy like Matsy Smith, he does seem to be one of those Michigan guys that they play at the correct position because you've heard it multiple times of guys like Quiddy Pay, where they're kicking him inside more, where he's maybe more naturally an edge rusher, but as a defensive tackle and a three technique, Mazi Smith, he seems to be a really good fit for that interior type of guy.
Yeah, we saw Mazi at Michigan line up a lot at one or zero tech, also known as a nose tackle, kind of that position where DeFore or Grover Stewart plays. Sorry, but yeah, so Mazi Smith probably going to be a second rounder, getting a lot of buzz there. Didn't test due to injuries and another variety of factors, but this guy's an absolute freak. We saw him top Bruce Feldman's freak list at the beginning of the year. He supposedly is a 33-inch vert, which might not sound that great, but when you're 6'3", 323 pounds, that is an absolutely insane vertical jump. That's higher than my vertical jump, and I definitely do not weigh 323 pounds. So he's also got great arm length, 34-inch arms, and just does a great job with his hand placement there, just being able to displace guards and centers on the interior, and his hand punch is really powerful. So once he gets his hands on you, it's really easy for him to just shove guys away, and make sure they're not going to disrupt the defense and really clear lanes for linebackers to come up and fill gaps. And then even he didn't have a whole lot of production in college, but he's just so athletic that he's going to be more probably productive in the NFL, just because when you're that level caliber of athlete, it's going to be hard as you're playing longer not to find some sacks or find some tackles for loss. But yeah, I'd say the strength of his game is just the power that he packs with his hands, just because he's able to stun offensive linemen and then shed them, and then kind of just create gaps for the linebackers or make tackles in the backfield by himself.
Yeah, for sure. And the movement that he has for his size and kind of like the vision he has to kind of locate and track the football, I think is like also really underrated, something that he does. Like you don't really see him get fooled too many times there along that defensive line. And I mean, yeah, just super heavy hands, just he just tosses guys around. And whenever you have a guy at his size, I think he plays with really um he just carries his body very well, and he just has a really strong anchor and like the point of attack that he plays with. Um, so what are like some of like the weaknesses that you possibly see in his game?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things I noticed is that sometimes his spatial awareness when it comes to double teams is a little suspect. He doesn't always notice when it's coming, which is very hard to tell. But you're going to get double teamed a lot as a nose tackler or one tech, whether you're lining head up on the center or shaded off to the side. Either way, because especially when you're that disruptive, when you're that level caliber of athlete, there's going to be teams that are going to be game planning for you. And so if he can just recognize, I'm going to get double teamed a lot, and then not be so caught off guard by it, and then he's knocked off balance. And then if your nose tackle's caught off balance, that kind of throws off the entire defense because he's like the pillar of that run stop. And so when he gets knocked off balance, then those guards are able to climb to the linebackers and get hands on them. And so that's where you get gashed. So if he's able to just, recognize when those double teams are likely in the situations, and then just be able to, hold firm and not get moved and just kind of be a stump, because not always are you going to be the guy that gets to make the tackles. Sometimes have to die slowly, is what they call it. So just, being able to recognize that and not being knocked off balance by those double teams as much and just holding firm. That's something he needs to improve on as he goes to the next level.
Yeah, I agree. And for me too, like you see a lot of the times, like he does tend to kind of take plays off a little bit. He doesn't necessarily play with that intensity every play. And also too, like there were some issues, not necessarily like character concerns, but he did have some issues, kind of he's had a couple of arrests, he's had, some tickets and stuff like that. So that could be a red flag for some teams. We'll see kind of how all that plays out. Obviously, that's going to be big in the meetings for him, but he's a guy too that like you don't necessarily see win in pass rush very well. On one-on-ones, he's always around the ball, but he just can't seem to finish, the plays. So, and I don't know if that's kind of more due to just he's still learning, how to maneuver. They refer to it as like getting skinny there. If he's
Yeah.
still kind of referring to like, getting skinny and getting through, those gaps very well. But he does seem to miss a lot of sacks, but he is always around the ball. So those are some things I think he can work on. But now let's pull up some plays here, or a play that I was able to find that I think kind of really demonstrates something that he does well, and really why he's high on a lot of teams' boards, as far as, like you said, getting up into that second round, the mid second, maybe even possibly a guy that could sneak into the late first. Um, but we'll see if he's available there for the Colts if they do decide to pick at pick 35.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of see here, if you're curious, he is lined up over the right guard here, number 78, and you can kind of see the way he's able just to get through uh, guys here on multiple plays.
Yeah, so there again, you can just see the arm length is very apparent there as he's able to keep the offensive guard's arms and hands away from him and being able to make full direct contact with him so that the guard's able to control him. He's obviously not able to do that. And then that strength just to be able to move him out of the way and disrupt the throw there is very obvious. And, it's just every time in all of these plays here, just in these quick clips, that play, he lets the left guard, that actually might be Steve Avila, get
It
into
is. I was going to make that point. I was going to say if you're
yeah. So
if
yeah, so that's really good on good right there. You can see there his pad level's a little bit high. I'd like to see him get a little bit lower, but I mean, this is just from play to play. You're not going to get consistency every time, especially with a guy that's big. But there's a splash play, the plays we love to see from nose tackles, defensive tackles, getting off, stacking and shedding, and then finishing for like a 1 or 2 yard gain.
Yeah, and Steve Avila, like we talked about in our video, I mean, he's a big boy, and you don't really see him get driven backwards a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but uh, like you were saying, this is good on good, and whenever you have guys of that caliber going at each other, I mean, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, and that's the life of the position for sure.
Yeah, and you're not always going to see a bunch of splash plays from guys that have played this position because, like I said, they're taking on a lot of double teams. Their job is just to hold their ground, hold their water, and not get blown off the ball. A lot of times it's just, hold your gap, whether they're one gapping or two gapping. So yeah, it's just, he does a good job at what he's supposed to do, but I think there's a lot more untapped potential there just because of how athletic this guy is. And maybe, a pro team can get more out of him than say Michigan did. I just don't see him really being on the Colts radar just because of some of the red flags you mentioned. That's really would be atypical of Chris Ballard to go do something like that. But, I guess, he could always change his MO. Or if something happened and he fell way too far, maybe the Colts take a shot at him. But, maybe round 2, round 3, I would say maybe that would occur if he fell to, like, say, day 3.
I agree. And the reason kind of why I just wanted to highlight him is just because something we talked about pre-show is DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart both have, their contracts are up pretty soon, and they're going to be free agents or if they do not get re-signed. So that's kind of yet to be seen, but that could be a really big position of need here in the next year or two for the Colts, is that interior defensive tackle spot. And we always know, like, you kind of want to draft a year early and kind of develop guys to step into that role, as opposed to needing it as soon as you need it. It's not always easy to replace it as soon as you need it. So I just think, with going into that, if he was to drop, say, like those red flags are there, he drops into the third round. Uh, would that be kind of a player that you could see Chris Ballard looking like? I know he's got red flags, but the upside's there, the athleticism is there, and this might be a guy that we're willing to take that shot on.
Yeah, we've seen Chris Ballard kind of defy the odds in terms of what position he goes and drafts according to like what people think the Colts' needs are. So it wouldn't surprise me at all, not necessarily even if he took Mozzie Smith, but just, a defensive tackle on day 2, maybe round 3. And people would be like, there's much bigger needs on the roster, but Chris just doesn't go that way because he's always looking ahead for the future. And it really just comes down to who's on the board, where do they have them ranked. It's a lot less about, positional neediness because they figure they can have other ways of addressing that. But yeah, it's normally just comes down to who's your best player available. If Mozzie Smith is there in the third round, wherever the Colts are picking, maybe that's who they have at the top of their board. It's just going to depend on how the draft falls the first couple of rounds.
Right, for sure. So let's move on now. Let's get into some more of the edge rusher type of guys. That's a position of need. Obviously, the Colts still have Kwity Paye going in to now his third year. That's really when you want to see the leap from pass rushers occur. Either this is kind of the sink or swim year for the pass rush guys that you draft. Is that third year? You've had 2 years to develop, and now we're going to see if Kwity Paye can actually live up to that immense potential that he does have. Not only that, but they let Yannick Ngakoue walk and ended up signing a free agent. The name is escaping me right now. I'm sure you've got it handy.
Yeah, Samson Ebukam.
Samson Ebukam. Yeah, that is it. Because I'm looking at all these names for players we have right now, so to get pulled up here. So that's kind of where I'm focused on. But yeah, but behind them, obviously, they re-signed Tyquan Lewis, who can play inside, can play outside, but the position is still a little thin there. And you would really want to see that addressed. And as we've stated multiple times, you can never have too much pass rush. So we really kind of want to focus now more on edge rusher type of guys. And we're going to kick that off with a guy that is really one of my favorite guys in the class, and that is Tennessee edge rusher Byron Young. And I just want to kind of pass the buck to you to see kind of how you view him, what range you think he's in, and how do you think he fits with what the Colts could use?
Yeah, so kind of going back to what you were talking about on team need there, I think the Colts could really use a developmental pass rusher kind of behind Samson Ebukam, kind of at that rush end. We got Kwity Paye and Diota Yigbo that we know play kind of that big end role in Gus Bradley's defense. However, Byron Young would probably play, if they were to go with Byron Young, would be that backup developmental pass rusher defensive end that would sit right around where Samson Ebukam's at. But, the cool thing about Byron Young is kind of just his backstory. He had a unique path. He wasn't really playing football when he was of college age. He was actually working at a Dollar General and then went to a JUCO and then found his way on to Tennessee's roster. So just a very unique path. So, a guy that's going to be really, hardworking, and a guy that's going to be really thankful for everything that's given to him and work extremely hard just because, it kind of came out of nowhere. And that kind of shows on the football field with his play. He has a really high motor that we can see play in and play out, especially in the run game, even though he is undersized, only about 250 pounds, kind of like what I was saying earlier at the beginning of the show. But he displays great flexibility as well, ability to bend the hip, run the arc on offensive tackles, get around. He needs to gain size and strength if I think he's going to stick in the NFL, just because he's not great in the run game, even though he does give effort. It's just hard when you're not too big. And then there are a few things like that I noted that he needs to clean up, just because he hasn't been, playing for as long as other guys, and like just false steps and then play recognition. Sometimes he's, taking false steps based off of where he's supposed to be going or which gap he's supposed to be, going to on a stunt or something like that. But right now I see the guy as a designated pass rusher with room to grow, and that would fit exactly what the Colts need there behind Samson Ebukam.
Yeah, and also he is kind of an older guy, so he's already 25, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of see he's only a few years away from being in his athletic prime, and with a guy that age that is as raw as he is, in the terms of football, it it really does kind of raise the question of just how high his ceiling can go. Like, by the time he is able to get all that stuff, could he be approaching 29, 30 years old at
Mm-hmm.
that point? And I think that's something that teams are going to have to really balance with. But like you said, he is a little undersized. I believe he's like 6'2", around 250 pounds. So he's not one of these big, long, incredibly you know bigger edge rushers. But what you do get is something that you pointed out, and that's just like the twitch and the first step that he has, and um, just his ability to really catch guys off guard with his first step. And
Mm-hmm.
I think too, like somewhere where I thought he really shined was whenever like they use like stunts and twists and loops. I think he did a fantastic job just because of how quick that first step is. He could really get up on guys quick. And I think with that explosive first step, you can really see, his ability as like, he can really kind of get his hands and drive his legs into guys and kind of create movement. And something that he has too that like Mazzy Smith doesn't is like the dude is just like relentless. Like
Yeah.
he has always given his best effort just about every down that he's out there. So I think that's something that can be said as well for something like him. You're not going to have to worry about him coming in and not putting in the work.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying. Again, with his background, the guy's going to work for everything he's got. He's had to come a long way from where he originally was. So even just the dream of this is probably something that is very inspiring to all of us. And then honestly, yeah, just for him, it's just like, yeah, I had to come so far, so here I am, and work my butt off and see what I can be in the NFL. But yeah, just another room that place where he could grow is just in his pass rush plan. A lot of guys, it takes a long time to develop what they're going to do because offensive linemen, they're going to counter everything you do. If you have one move, they're going to study that on film all week and prepare for that. So then when they stop that, you have to be able to move to your next thing. So what we want to see from Byron Young is just the ability to move from that one arm stab that he typically uses as his first thing, and then kind of come up with counters to when offensive linemen tend to overset. When they try to beat him with speed and they try to quick set him, is he going to be able to have a quick move to hand counter that quick punch that he's going to get when a tackle kind of jumps out at him? So just that's going to take time. And like you said, he is a little bit older. So will he be past his athletic prime by the time it clicks? A lot of time it clicks for defensive ends and pass rushers like that. That remains to be seen. But I like the makeup of this guy. And I think the physical tools are all there, like it is with a lot of the guys we're going to talk about. But Byron Young's an inspiring story, and I think a guy that Chris Ballard is going to love.
Yeah, for sure. And so he's another guy that is generally going, like you see in these mock drafts, you generally see him go anywhere between like the third and fourth round. So he's possibly a guy that could be had on day 3 there in the fourth round. But if you do believe that strongly in him, I think you could take the shot on him in the third and feel comfortable.
Yeah. I think that's probably where Byron Young will go. If he falls, it'll again be due to his age. But yeah, I fully expect Byron Young to be gone as a top 100 pick. And yeah, I think he'll interview great. And I think some team's going to fall in love with him and may draft him at the back end of the second round.
Yeah, so let's pull up a play here that does kind of showcase what he can bring you here and the ability. And he's number 6 here, lining up over the left tackle. So if you're following along, just make sure to watch him, and you can really see that explosive first step and how quick he can get on guys here.
Yeah, so really with that play, we see him setting up, showing the tackle that he's probably going to run up field, and then when the tackle, sets up, then he beats him back inside, kind of pushes him to the side, and then hits him with a spin move, and then levels Cade Klubnik there. So this is actually kind of what I was talking about. This is kind of that development. This is a game later in the year where we see multiple pass rush moves strung together, which is, it takes a long time to get that done. So we see the development in Byron Young and all these things that he's able to do. So yeah, this is really great to see. But just being able to set up a tackle so that you can beat them in a different way. It's a chess match really, and just being able to work on that constantly and knowing how to beat your opponent is something that's just going to again take time. But we see a flash of it right here.
Yeah, and this is just some of that untapped potential that he has just as an athlete that, like you were saying, if he does develop that technical aspect, Colts fans love a good spin move from a defensive end. So I figured this was a good play to kind of showcase and maybe get some Colts fans on board for what he can bring you as a rotational guy.
Yes, quite reminiscent of Dwight Freeney back in the day from when the Colts had 2 very good pass rushers and Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney, which, Robert Mathis was a day 3 guy. So maybe we can find the next Robert Mathis.
Fifth rounder.
Yep, 5th rounder. Yeah, so Alabama A&M. Maybe we'll find the next one. Maybe we'll talk about him. Who knows? Stick around and find out.
Yeah, so let's now move on here to Another guy that is really kind of in that third, fourth round. And he's a guy very similar to a guy like Tyquan Lewis here, and actually plays at the same college that Tyquan played at. So he's a guy that can play inside, a guy that can play outside, and another just really long, athletic guy that can give you multiple, positions. And that's Zach Harrison. And this was a guy that, if you did get to see the Ohio State Pro Day, or if you haven't heard from guys that were able to attend, like he just blew everybody away with the position drills at the Ohio State Pro Day and just how freaky and athletic he really was. So whenever you're looking at Zach Harrison, and he's a guy that, he came in, he's a little bit of a higher ranked recruit, and he might not have the production that some of the guys, but you really look at just the athletic profile from him, and you wonder, with NFL coaching and NFL defensive line coaching and a strong supporting cast around him, just how high that ceiling could possibly be.
Yeah, and the first thing that you look at when you look at Zach Harrison's physical profile is the arm length, 36 inches. We were talking about this with offensive tackles. The same thing applies for the same reasons with defensive linemen and pass rushers. 36-inch arms in a defensive lineman and edge rusher is absolutely insane. It's going to allow him, again, to kind of work some different moves that most guys can't win with. That one-arm stab, kind of like I was saying with Byron Young, is going to work a lot better for a guy like Zach Harrison, who has 36-inch arms, as opposed to Byron Young, who has 32-inch arms. And he's going to be able to create leverage and lever the offensive tackle back because he has those longer arms that are able to get into his chest before the offensive tackle gets into him. This goes back again to why we can't have guys with 32, 33-inch arms playing out there at tackle, because if they were to try to go up against Zach Harrison, he would just beat him up and down because they would never be able to get into his chest. So we saw steady improvement from Zach Harrison. There was never like a big nuclear year for him, but he did have, steady improvement all the way up until his last year at Ohio State. I think he uses his length very well. He knows how to use it. Anytime you're going to be in a large program like Ohio State, they're going to teach you when you have those physical gifts to try to maximize them. I still think there's some room to grow there. But again, what he needs to work on, rush plan. You're going to keep hearing me say this throughout the night. It's just almost all of these guys. There's very rarely a prospect that comes out that already knows what he's going to do for every offensive tackle counter that he's going to see, or any offensive lineman counter that he's going to see. You just have to have reps and reps and reps. And like you said earlier, that's why you normally wait till year 3 for these guys to be really productive. And some of them never figure it out. But a lot of them have the physical tools to be great. It just really comes down to mentality and how well you pick things up and how you study your opponent.
Yeah. And so also, like, whenever you look at him, he's another guy. He was a team captain in 2021, so that's something that's going to be a big talking point for the Colts. They're going to make sure to put a big star on him as well for that. But yeah, just the explosion, the length, the linear speed he has is just really impressive. And although he was never, I believe he never had more than 4 sacks in a season, so you don't really see that production there, like I was saying. But you just wonder, you know, with the length and the explosion and the height, or the height, weight, speed, everybody you hear it talked about, of a guy like this with that NFL coaching, really what can he kind of become? And what's great about having those long arms like that, and having his wingspan, is it just allows him to reach places that a lot of guys just can't. And you don't have to be as technically sound whenever you have arms like that, because you're able to get hands on the football, you're able to get hands on the quarterback a lot easier. And it also just kind of allows you to play, you're able to get your hands on the defensive tackle or the offensive tackle, and guards a lot quicker as well, kind of like what you were alluding to whenever we were doing the O-line breakdowns. Whenever you have that length at the offensive tackle position, it just allows you to get your hands on the player that much quicker because you have that length. And that's something that can really help him. Where he does kind of struggle a little bit is you don't really see, he's a little stiff. So you don't really see him have that bend, that you kind of would love to see out of pass rushers. And that's why you see him possibly kick in and out a lot. He doesn't really have that set position, because I don't think you can line him up at edge rusher and just play solely edge rusher. but he's a guy, like I was saying, that was very similar to a guy like Tyquan Lewis in the way that he moves and the length that he has.
Yeah, I completely agree. And another thing that I saw that was very interesting in Zach Harrison's game was the ability to corner effectively, meaning that he is able to also run the arc and use some of that flexibility. You noted that he does have tight hips, and you can see that come up on film. He plays with a little bit too high of pad level at times, but that's also just because he's a big guy. But yeah, I mean, he has the ability to run the arc and get around guys. One of the things that he does tend to do, though, is sometimes when he doesn't corner, he gets too far upfield, and that creates rush lanes for the quarterback to escape from. So, just kind of instead of doing that, learning to work back to the quarterback, again, use more hand counters so you can stop and then retrace your steps and get back to the quarterback. We see a lot of guys get sacks like that. I think Aiden Hutchinson got a lot of sacks early in his rookie year, kind of retracing his steps after the quarterback already stepped up back in the pocket after he hit the back of his drop. So just some things like that. That's how you're going to get a lot of good sacks in the NFL. And so I think if he learns to do that, he's got all the physical tools. Like we already said, 36-inch arms. That's incredible. Former 5-star, so he obviously has the athletic profile to be really good. And I think if you just let him sit, not even necessarily like sit on the bench, but just get into a pass rushing unit and have him play behind somebody, this guy could really develop into a full-time starter on 32 NFL teams.
Yeah, for sure. So now let's get into a few plays here we have of Zach Harrison, and I'll let you kind of take point and see what you see. So if you do see where he is on the right side there, lining up over the tight end and the right tackle here, follow along if you could.
Yeah, so right there, we see the arm length come into effect immediately with the ability to punch the ball out of the quarterback's arms. Here we see the pass rush move of a Euro step right on the offensive tackle, kind of just basketball Euro steps. Looks like he's going outside, then comes back inside, hits with that rip move underneath his arms, gets under the tackle's arms, and then is able to lift him up so that he can't get hands on him. And then he, swipes the ball out and does a great job of finishing the play.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you can really see that length just really affect the quarterback here. And we've got another play here. I'll go ahead and get that pulled up. So this is a second play. So if you guys want to follow along, this is, I believe there's like 2 or 3 different plays in this as well. I was able to find here, I can't remember which Twitter account I was able to actually pull this from. So the other one, that was from All 22 film that I had, but this one is actually a really cool Twitter video I found just going through some different stuff. And you can really kind of see him overpower him. I believe that was a guard there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, we just see, low man is you're typically told wins, but he actually doesn't make the low move here. He kind of the tackle here drops his head a little bit, which is why he probably gets knocked down. But he is actually coming at him from a higher angle. But yeah, did you just see the raw power in his game to be able to knock him down, and then obviously wins with a hand swipe there, running the arc, like I said earlier. Able to corner effectively, get around the tackle, who is taking a very interesting set there. He's almost running from the start. But, nevertheless, it is still a Big Ten left tackle, and you love to see guys win like that, although I think he was set up for failure from the snap. But, yeah, again, finishing, you see a lot of knocked forced fumbles in Zach Harrison's film just because, he does a good job of finishing when he can get to the quarterback.
Yeah, and this is another play, that you can really see that arm length kind of come in effect, which I believe this was actually a completed pass, but he did get a quarterback hit on this last one. But just this one in particular, you can really see where that length is just so very beneficial for edge rushers and guys that are going to be rushing the quarterback, because you are able to, once you get around that tackle, you can really kind of utilize that length and get hands on the ball, as opposed to it just being a sack. He actually creates a touchdown here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something you can't really account for with, mental tools or just anything else. I mean, that's just what God-given arm length can do for you, which is why guys really look at that and really value that. And that's why, 3 inches of arm length can, move you up an entire round and make you, you know, millions more dollars just because, you know, your arms are 3 inches longer than your peers. So
Yeah, it could be a difference between I mean, like that's a play that could win a game, and that could be the difference between just a quarterback sack or a quarterback hit, or having one of your teammates take the ball into the opposing end zone for six.
yep. Yeah, and that's something we hope he can reproduce here in the NFL, hopefully for the Colts.
Yeah, for sure. And we do know Chris Ballard does love those Big Ten defensive linemen, especially out of Ohio State. He is a big Ohio State defensive lineman fan, it seems like. So
Yes, yes,
um,
Tyquan Lewis. You know, he's been a good player when he's been on the field. And they're giving
he
him another
has.
chance. So, you know, maybe we can get some double Ohio State defensive lineman action meeting at the quarterback this next year.
For sure. All right. So now let's get into another guy here that was a Senior Bowl participant, and that is Andre Carter the second. He's another guy with just extreme length, just a really freaky athlete, but he does kind of have some hangups in his game. So he's a guy I did get a chance to watch pretty closely at the Senior Bowl, and he kind of struggled a little bit, especially going against some of these defensive or these offensive linemen, and you really saw him kind of get beat just because he doesn't have that play strength. He's still developing that, but he's a guy that's coming out of Army, so he's going to be a disciplined player, well coached, and he's really going to work. You're not going to have to worry about any character issues with a guy like that, and you really see the work ethic shine through. So he always does kind of seem to put his best foot forward. It's just he is so long and lanky that he can kind of get overtaken with power, and that's something that he's got to work on.
Yeah, and this is a guy that we saw getting round one buzz in the preseason, coming into the summer and all of that scouting process. You know, Andre Carter was getting late round one buzz, so kind of see that a little bit of a fall from grace there. He's probably going to end up being a day three guy now, just because there was a lot of production 2 years ago, but then this past year it kind of fell off a little bit. He just plays very interesting. Army lined him up in a variety of different ways. He was dropping into pass coverage and his zone coverages a lot, which he is an adequate athlete and he's able to do that. He's a good athlete. He can probably do that in the NFL at a respectable level. But yeah, when he was rushing the passer, it was from very interesting angles, normally from wide nine techniques, just something you're not going to be seeing a whole lot of in the NFL. He also, and I'm going to say it again, sound like a broken record. He's raw and he really just does not have much of a rush plan right now. But I have seen him win with inside moves, and he wins with quickness and overall. So it's a lot of times just he's overpowering lesser athletes just because of who Army plays on their schedule. But there are all the physical tools there, and with every one of these guys that we're going to cover, it's the physical tools. It's just which one of them can put it together. And like we said earlier, guys like Robert Mathis, who were drafted in the 5th round, they're able to, even if they come out of a very small school. So Andre Carter, really big, lanky, tall guy, got to play with better pad level. Don't want to get out leveraged by guys that can get up and under your pads. And he's probably going to play a 3-4 outside linebacker. So I don't know how well he'll fit in the Colts system. But if the Colts were to draft him, it would probably be based off of character, and he'd be a core special teams guy for them, and he would be a designated pass rusher, even if he was lining up, in a 4-3 system as a hand in the dirt defensive lineman, which he hasn't done at all in college. So that learning curve would be rather steep.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, yeah, you're gonna have to be patient with a guy like that. But I mean, he's a guy that, like you were saying, he's got terrific length. He's extremely athletic and agile, and he gives great effort on every play. So, excuse me, those three things right there, that's a really good place to start with pass rushers. And you always kind of look for that in guys, but you are going to have to be patient with him. Also, too, something that I did notice quite often was just that he did remain a little bit undisciplined whenever it came to uh, I guess just kind of maintaining his responsibilities, and he does give strong effort, but it does kind of take him out of position a lot. So his just discipline and run instincts and stuff like that, they are still kind of a work in progress, and he's a work in progress. But like I was saying, when you have that length and you have the athleticism he has and you have the work ethic he has, that's something that you really want to bet on. And I think he's a guy that, like you were saying, he was getting first round buzz, but I mean, he's more than likely a day 3 guy right now, and if you can get a guy with that upside on day 3 that he has, I think that could be a fantastic addition as long as you are willing to be patient. So you're probably not looking year 1, probably not even really looking year 2, but that year 3, kinda like what we talked about with him, that could be a really crucial, stepping stone for him.
Yeah, and that's really what you're looking for out of day three guys. You're looking for things that you can't teach, the physical tools. Because if you can get the physical tools, you're going to assume that your coaches can kind of coach the rest of them into them. So that's what you're kind of looking for. So that's why I think Andre Carter projects as a day three player, just because it's there. It's just, can we put it together? And normally it's very hit or miss. But I think you take a chance on a guy like him just because he went to a service academy. He obviously has very high character, and the locker room would respect him, and he'd probably work extremely hard just because he is one of the few guys that have come out of the service academies in the past couple of years. So this opportunity for him, the government had to make an exception for him just
Right,
to be able
right.
to enter the draft. So this guy's going to come in, know that he's going to be given nothing, and just kind of work his butt off, work his tail off, and maybe we can see something where he really develops his game, kind of, matures a lot in that aspect of his game. And then we can, see him become a productive player in the NFL.
Yeah, and, his leadership is something also that is always really talked highly about, is just how he just commands respect in the locker room and how he leads guys by example. And
Mhm.
for a team like the Colts, who are really looking to build the character of that locker room back up, based off of a lot of things that's happened in the last couple years, he could be a guy, especially on day 3, that you could insert into a locker room, and he's going to hold guys accountable. He's going to hold himself accountable, and I think that's a very strong selling point for him.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's why I think he might go ahead of some other guys that are kind of in similar situations as him, especially with teams that really value that kind of thing. So yeah, we know the Colts do. That's something that they look for, and it wouldn't surprise me if Andre Carter was a Colt and heard his name called on April 29th, day 3 of the draft there sometime on that day.
Right, for sure. So now let's get into some film. And as you can see here, this is a few different plays from Andre Carter, and you do kind of see him lined up, not his hand in the dirt, but he does kind of line up. Uh, let's see here. I'm trying to get this. Okay, there we go. All right. So if you are following along here, he will have that little circle around him, and we can go ahead and get into some plays.
Yeah. So first thing, like I wanted to point out earlier, was you can see he's playing from a two technique, no hand in the dirt. So it's just going to give him a little bit different of a stance. He's not going to be doing that in the NFL likely, unless he's coming out of a 3-4 scheme that wants him to do that. If he was with the Colts, he probably wouldn't be doing that. Again, we see this weird angle kind of created because he's playing at such a weird technique, a wide 9, and then he's going up against Georgia State here. This guy just doesn't even touch him. He just beats him with pure speed around the edge. Gets that outside shoulder, and then the tackle, is a step slow and isn't able to finish or really even lay hands on him. So that's just pure speed right there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you can see here he's lined up on the right side over the tight end and the right tackle, and you can see him kind of split that double team just right off the bat and use that length that he has to kind of use his hands and get through that double team here.
Yeah, and that's a great play by him. It's also a little bit of a miscommunication there by the guard and tight end. The guard was trying to pass, or the tackle, I'm sorry, was supposed to pass that off to the tight end. He didn't wait long enough
Yeah,
to do that, and so they kind of miscommunicated there. But still a great play, to be able to defeat two guys, shoot the gap there. So it shows quickness that you can, will translate to the NFL, and then finishing, which is something a lot of guys have trouble doing.
right. All right. So now you can see here, if you missed it, we'll play it one more time. He does have the circle around him. And this is a play where you kind of see him, he does drop into coverage, which you're probably not going to see much, but I mean, you just never know. And with a guy of his length and athleticism, it is something that if you need him to do, like in a pinch, um, he he can do it.
Yeah, and that helps with disguising things as well. A lot of times with these fire zone blitzes or these mock blitzes that a lot of NFL teams are running now, where they're trying to disguise things. They'll walk a bunch of guys up, simulated pressures drop. They'll bring four guys, but it looks like they're bringing seven, so it throws off the protections. And you have to have guys that are able to drop into coverage. You wouldn't want Grover Stewart dropping into coverage as we've seen in the past. If you could have
No.
Andre Carter doing that instead, that would help a lot with those simulated pressures that are really good at confusing quarterbacks. So that's just an added bonus with a guy that has experience dropping into zone coverages. We've seen him I saw him on film against Wake Forest actually lining up and running with running backs. That was his responsibility, was to be man up on the running back. So this guy is even being tasked with playing man coverage. I just think he'll probably fit better with a team that runs a 3-4, just because it'll be more natural for him. But he could be coached to be a productive guy in a 4-3.
Yeah, and you can really kind of see him here just use that speed, that linear speed, just to really kind of get through on the right guard here.
Yeah. Again, from that 2-point stance, just blowing by guys, speed, and they can't even touch him. They can't get hands on him because he's got that swipe ability, and he's on him so quick that they're just almost surprised, and then it's just whoop. Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's there's nothing you can do about that.
The swim move right there. And there's that inside counter move I was talking about that he has shown flashed in the past. Just doing that consistently is what he's really going to have to work on.
For sure. And you can really see that length affect that pass as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, a lot of good stuff from him. Like you were saying, he is more comfortable in a 3-4, but I do think, like I said, with the character, with the athleticism, with the length, if you're patient with him and you do kind of allow him to grow and come from a 3-point stance a lot more, because he's going to work at it. That's something that you don't have to worry about with him. So, as long as you're patient, I do think the tools are there, where you could just have him put his hand in the dirt and just say, look, forget dropping into coverage. We know you can do it. That's all well and fine. Just go get the quarterback. Go get us the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I think you can use him in a variety of situations. Again, I think he'll come in and be an immediate contributor on special teams. So that's always valuable, especially on day 3.
Yeah, absolutely. So now let's get into our last guy we have film on. To me, possibly one of the guys that fits the Colts the best out of all of these guys. And maybe not quite a well-known guy yet, but he's hopefully a guy that we can turn you on to. And he's a guy that I've really enjoyed watching, and that's Jose Ramirez out of Eastern Michigan. And I believe like you also think very highly of him as well. So curious to hear what you think about him.
Yeah, so a guy coming out of the MAC, a little bit of a different, he's not going to have been playing, big time schools, facing big time competition, but he did put up big time sack numbers. So that's something we always love to see. A lot of production. Guy knows how to get sacks, which is very important when it comes to the NFL level. Played, I said he played from a lot of steep angles. So again, they're kind of setting him up to win a lot, especially in these weird angles that you're not going to see a whole lot of in the NFL. He's a liability in the run game just a little bit, just because of his size. Again, I think he weighed in around 240 at the combine, something like that. So this is another guy kind of like Andre Carter, kind of like Byron Young. You're probably going to be a developmental designated pass rusher unless he can put on a lot of weight and get a lot stronger. But just that ability to win and his first step quickness is really, really good. He was a higher recruit. He was supposed to go to Arizona, I believe, but then redshirted there and then eventually, went over to Eastern Michigan. So, this is an athlete that was originally recruited to play Power 5 football. But yeah, I just think the first step quickness, the bendiness that he possesses, projects to be someone who you can be a rotational pass rusher on third down and, can get you 5-6 sacks a year, which if you can find that on day 3, in my opinion, is a huge win.
Yeah, for sure. And he is a guy. I mean, his combine, I believe he had a 6.95 3-cone and a 4.3 short shuttle, which would that was number 1 among all edge rushers at the combine.
Yeah.
So he is a guy that you really see the explosiveness just really pop off. Something else with him that I've really enjoyed is just like he's just so fluid. in tight spaces. And, he does have that flexibility and the hips, to really bend and you kind of use that shoulder and just so explosive and able to get around tackles very easily.
Yeah, exactly. And like what you're saying with like being able, that ability to get around tackles, kind of showing in that 3 cone time. The 3 cone at the NFL Combine is one of the best predictors that we have of like
Yeah.
position to success in the NFL. I don't remember exactly what the cutoff time is, but if he was number one, there's a lot of successful pass rushers that once they get under that kind of benchmark for the 3 cone, that's kind of like where we see they have the effective bendiness. The ability to, once they're able to bend very well and get under offensive tackles, they have a lot of sack production in the NFL. It's not, a one-to-one comparison, but it's definitely something that I think a lot of evaluators take in and, use when they're selecting guys.
Right. And another thing with him, so he was a Senior Bowl participant and only that, but he also was a team captain. So that's going to be something that the Colts, as we know, put a lot of weight on. They end up making those guys. He's got the production, he's got the character, he's got the work ethic, and um, he is a guy that I think very similar to Andre Carter, though, is like he does stand up a lot, so you don't really see him in those 3-point stances rushing in a 4-3. But I do think with the bendiness that he has, I think the transition for him would be much easier than it would be
Yeah.
for a guy like Andre Carter.
Yeah, and I think just the scheme that he played in would translate a little bit better as well.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into some videos here on him. And we have a few different or a couple different plays here. We'll go ahead and start. So if you look here where the yellow arrow is, that is going to be him. And obviously, you get a little grainy all 22 film here. Whenever you're getting into some of these smaller school guys, you're not going to have that wonderful high depth that Ohio State and LSU and Alabama have, but it's still good stuff nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just really see just how he works the hips and that bend there,
Yeah.
the edge.
Wins to the outside there. I believe this was his 4 sack game against Western Michigan. So he just obviously has the ability to take over, some games, which is really nice to see. He kind of got in a groove there. And once you get in a groove as a pass rusher, you're going to be pressuring guys all day. So, takes the outside edge there and wins. And, just something that he's shown consistently on film the ability to do. We'll probably see another play here.
Yeah, and so you can kind of see him working on the right side here, lined up over the tight end and the right tackle here. You can just see him get through 2 different guys and just really make a play. And he just really bullies both of them.
Yeah, he does a great job here of catching the offensive tackle's hands and throwing them off. Shows great eye-hand coordination there, and just really knocks the tackle off balance there. And then it uses the leverage that he creates from that situation to win and really knock the tackle, kind of down or off balance or however you want to say that. And then, again, he's able to win against running back, which all defensive ends should do. Being able to recover so quickly from defeating one guy, moving into the next. It's just 1, 2, boom. It's very impressive to see that running back did not look like he wanted any piece of.
No, and something too that I really love about his film is just the way that he tends to finish like really violently. Like he just he really puts a hit on the quarterback whenever he does get there.
Yeah, and that's something you just love to see. Hopefully they don't start throwing flags for that in the NFL. Guys would get frustrated about that. Even though that
they do have those new helmets now, so
Yeah.
maybe they'll be a little bit
thanks
more
to
lenient.
Vices, they might be reducing the number of penalties, unfortunate penalties that get called on defensive linemen who are just trying to do their job sacking quarterbacks.
Right. And so he's a guy too that you can generally see projected into like that 6th round. And to me, like he would probably be one of my favorite picks in that range for the Colts. And I believe they have multiple 6th rounders this year.
Yeah, I think that's a great guy. Sorry if we got some background noise going on there. But yeah, I think that's Jose Ramirez would be a great day 3 guy, like a lot of these guys we've been talking about, that would be come in and, could be a productive player for the Colts.
Yeah, for sure. So all five could be interesting additions to the Colts. All have, strong athleticism and could be, later round picks as opposed to just a couple guys that we talked about, especially there early, that could go up into day 2. But what are some other guys on your radar that we haven't touched on that you think could be on the Colts radar?
Yeah, so 2 guys I'll go ahead and throw out there, a pair of Big 12 guys, Dylan Horton out of TCU, Will McDonald, the 4th out of Iowa State. Been a
Love
big
Will McDonald.
fan of Will McDonald for a long time. Actually went on the local radio show over here and kind of talked him up a little bit before the combine, before he went off and, just showed incredible athletic testing. But the thing that I really like and think is intriguing about Will McDonald is just the fact that he was really, I felt, misused at Iowa State. They had him kind of lined up inside a little bit, and that's just not his game. He didn't have a lot of, individual pass rush reps against offensive tackles or offensive guards. He was kind of just thrown into the fray a little bit. So if you can, match him up with an offensive tackle and say, hey, just win, beat him to the outside, beat him to the spot, and then, win with hand counters and such. He's athletic enough to where he'll be able to do that. And I think Will McDonald could be a surprise guy that, has a double-digit sack year, maybe in the first couple of years of his rookie contract, and people are like, who is this guy just, racking up sacks? And it's Will McDonald, just because we don't really know what this guy can do independent of that weird scheme he was playing at Iowa State. And then Dylan Horton, the next guy, unless you wanted to go into your thoughts on Will McDonald real quick before I move on. But yeah, you said you really liked him.
Yeah, I'm a big Will McDonald fan. I think that he's a guy that's going to be that early day 2 edge rusher that you see. I think they would have to pick him up at 35. I wouldn't really
Yeah.
risk a trade down for him, but yeah, I mean, just really athletic frame, good size. He is a little undersized, a little bit of a slender guy, but um, he's he doesn't really have a long track record of production, but he has a lot of tools to work with. And he might never really be just like this every down, huge pass rusher type of guy. But I mean, he's got so much there to love. And I just think you could put him in day 1 really in pass rush packages, and you're going to be really happy with what he gives you. Just the lateral ability he has, the length that he has as well. He's got just like a tremendous wingspan on him, and I love the bend he shows, like the hips that he shows, and the spin moves, and he also has a good bull rush. Like he's just got a lot of tools to work with, so he's not going to need quite as much development as a lot of guys. But I just think that there's a lot to love there, and you could throw him in day 1, like I said, in the pass rush packages, and you're gonna love him, and then he can develop possibly into something more down the road.
Yeah, and that's another guy that I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up going in the back end of round 1. We said that about a few
Yeah.
guys we kind of talked about. But yeah, Will McDonald, definitely one of my favorite pass rushers in this class, especially one that I guess is a little bit under the radar, not in that first tier, I guess you could say, maybe for some evaluators, but not for me in particular, kind of that second tier guy that I'm really interested in. And then Dylan Horton, I'm going to evoke another name here that probably won't be too popular with Colts fans, but Ben Banigou. And just because, also because, they both played at TCU, but they also both, didn't have a whole lot of production while they were there. But, they both kind of are underdeveloped, kind of came in with this high athletic upside and motor. But, you just got to keep taking shots at the dartboard with this. And eventually one of these guys are going to hit. And I think, Dylan Horton is just another one of those shots you're throwing at the dartboard there. So,
Yeah, a guy too that's really kind of like after the combine, I kind of looked into a lot more that I think could stand out there in that 3rd round is Yaya Diaby out of Louisville. Another guy that's just extremely like athletic, just a great frame. I believe he's like 6'3", 260, somewhere around there, but just really explosive. Believe he ran like a 4.5 40, which is just pretty wild at 260. And he's just got really good flexibility, really good bend to him, really good pursuit as well. So he's a guy that like really kind of jumped off this season. So he didn't really have a lot of production up until this season, and then obviously this season he just really exploded. I think he had 14 sacks, I believe. So or 9 sacks, 14 tackles for loss here. I just got it pulled up. So yeah, I mean, you really saw him explode. So that's something that you really kind of look for whenever you're looking at pass rush as well, is you want to see that production increase year after year after year. And especially if there's a big jump going into their senior year and you can really see that development, that makes you feel a little bit better about a guy like that. And I just think that he could be one of those guys that just was a late bloomer, that you get him into the NFL and allow him to grow. And, I just think he's got a lot of potential to be a really good pass rusher down the road.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think Yaya Diaby is a very interesting prospect there. Another, like you said, a little bit of a day 3 guy. But, again, just another dartboard throw there. And a guy that I think Chris Ballard will like you said, because he's got such a high motor, always trying to chase down balls from backside. And I think that's something that you can really value in the NFL, because if you're not going to stick around for your sack production, at least you can make effort plays, and that'll help you stick around, whether it be on special teams or chasing guys down the line all the way across the field, whatever it is.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, a lot of really intriguing guys in this pass rush class. Like I said, outside of like Will Anderson and maybe Tyree Wilson, there's not that premier guy in this class, but there's a lot of depth and a lot of really good guys that could come in on day 2 or day 3, play special teams, give you a lot of athletic upside, a lot of guys with like really good wingspans as well, which I think is really important, and athletic upside. And kind of like you said at the start of the show, it just seems like every year these guys are just getting more and more athletic and
Yeah.
more explosive, and that's going to be more important as we see this league kind of go to this more running style of quarterback, where you're going to be tracking down the quarterback in the backfield and possibly kind of looping back inside after they take off, and having that type of athleticism and speed, and it's going to be paramount. So I love this class of edge rushers. Like I said, I don't think there's going to be that guy that you're going to get that is going to just be that definite every down pass rusher guy, but there's a lot of guys that you can play in sub packages and in roles that you can really build a strong foundation along your defensive line with.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think the Colts will definitely take one or two, more than likely one. But yeah, just get another guy here in the building and deploy him and third downs, or maybe the next guy that can rotate in on pass rushing down. So that's something I think Chris Ballard will be really attracted to here, maybe on day 3 of the draft.
Yeah, and this is really, whenever you look at the depth at cornerback, you look at the depth at edge rusher as well. This is where you can really see that trade down at 35 to gather more ammo for that 3rd, 4th round for some of these other guys. This is really where you can see that come into play for a lot of these guys.
Completely agree.
Yeah. So awesome. Great stuff as always. Super excited to sit down and chat with you. And with the end of this episode, we only have 2 more episodes to go. And we're going to be finishing up at the end of next week. So make sure to follow along. We will be doing running backs and linebackers and tight ends and safeties. And that will conclude our draft coverage next week. A lot of I'm super excited to get into this tight end class, even though I don't know if the Colts will go that route, just because I think they like the tight ends they have, and they just signed a guy as well, so Pharaoh Brown. So I think they like their tight end room, but I'm a big fan of this tight end class. I absolutely love it. So I'm super excited to talk about some of these guys that could possibly be on the Colts radar if they do decide to go that route. Running back's kind of the same thing. I mean, we don't really know. We don't really know if they'll go the running back route, but you just never know, because there are a lot of guys that have pass catching ability in this class that they could take a shot on late that they could utilize. So there's just so many different directions of this draft. And while when you're looking at this draft as a whole, you might not have that top end talent. Like I said, I think I've only got 14 first round grades on guys, but I think after pick 15 all the way into like the 40s and 50s, all these guys are just really similar in talent, and I think that's great depth. And even going into the third and fourth rounds in this draft, I think you're going to be able to come away with some really good players.
Yeah, I completely agree. Can't wait to get into these guys again next week. Tight end class is really fun. We got some really athletic guys like Zach Kuntz and Broderick Washington that are going to be really interesting players.
Yeah, for sure. And one of my favorite guys in this class we'll touch on is Payne Durham out of Purdue. I'm sure a lot of you Indiana guys are familiar with him. So just really excited to get into a lot of these guys here. But if you do enjoy this type of content, make sure to like, subscribe. Like I said at the beginning of the video, it helps us out. It helps us to continue to bring you more content like this. And if you have any other questions, we do have a question here. I want to kind of get your opinion on it because I know my opinion on it, but um, this is from Dave. So, is Will Anderson really a blue chip pass rusher? Watch some breakdown of him struggling against long arm tackles because of a lack of power rush, but I don't know nearly enough about defense. What's your kind of view on the Will Anderson Jr., kind of talk that's been out that he's just not this top tier pass rusher that's been all over the internet?
Yeah, so my opinion on Will Anderson is that he is a blue chip pass rusher in this class. Now, a few years ago, would he be the top edge rusher coming out in one of those classes? Probably not. He'd probably still be a top 10 pick. But he's kind of one of those tweeners where, he's not always going to be able to overpower every offensive tackle. But what he does have is he is very strong and he can do that. But he has multiple ways he can beat you. He can beat with his speed. He can sometimes beat you with that. But he's not going to win, every time just because he's not this big hulking guy a la Myles Garrett that can just bull rush guys and can beat them with speed. He's not like this absurdly special athlete like one of those guys. But he is the top pass rusher in this class. I would say consensusly will probably go in the top 5. And he does have multiple ways he can beat you. I think Alabama kind of used him a little bit differently than how he'll be used in the NFL. So I think once you get him a little more, running in the arc on tackles, he'll probably have a little bit more success. But yeah, I think he's will be a smashing success in the NFL. So not like Bosa or Watt. Yeah, I wouldn't say that he's that level of caliber of prospect coming out. Although Watt was a little bit, he was drafted in the middle of the first round.
Yeah, I believe he was 11th.
Yeah. So yeah, he's not. I wouldn't necessarily level him to one of the Bosa brothers. But yeah, I mean, not like Myles Garrett, but he'd still be a very highly coveted player in most draft classes, if not the top one.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we're just at this point in the draft now where people are just kind of looking for talking points, and you've really kind of seen that over the last couple of weeks with Will Anderson, talking about, well, maybe he's just not this top tier, pass rusher. Like, look, let's not overthink this. He's a damn good player. He's a damn good pass rusher, and he's going to make an immediate impact on whatever team is lucky enough to draft him.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that can really take the reins from day one and possibly get you, 8, 9, maybe even double-digit sacks in his first year.
Yeah. All valuable points here from our friend Dave, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great
I mean, these
question,
are all
Rich.
honest questions that, you see things on film and you're like, hey, do you guys see this too? So really appreciate the interaction there. But yeah, those are just my thoughts on it. I think he'll come in, and you'll probably see him next year have 7 or 8 sacks. He's that special of a guy. He's a really good athlete.
Incredible work ethic too.
Yeah, and anytime you can win in multiple different ways, like he's shown the ability to, you're going to probably be pretty successful. And he's got all the tools to do it. And he was in a great program, so it's going to translate very easily. So that's just how I see it. But yeah, so there's the Will Anderson talk.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, great question, Dave, and great stuff there. We appreciate you interacting, and like I was saying before, if you do enjoy this type of content, make sure to like the channel, subscribe. And with that being said, we're going to get out of here. We will be back next week to finish the last 2 episodes of our draft breakdown. This has been a phenomenal series. I've loved sitting down and talking with Jack, just an incredibly knowledgeable guy. And we've just had a blast doing this, or at least I know I have. So
I have to.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
been great.
thanks speak enough to your knowledge and all the work you put in. So excited for you to go to the draft and kind of watch it all in person, and then obviously the Senior Bowl. So lots of cool stuff, and just incredibly lucky to be here in this position, sit down and talk with you. So
Yeah. Well, I could echo the sentiments, man. Just I count myself lucky to have you with me along for the ride. So next year we will definitely be looking at we got to get you into the Senior Bowl and the draft and all that stuff. I got to get you with me to some of these things,
would
and
love to.
I would just love the conversations in person with us sitting down and watching these guys live.
Yeah.
It would be awesome. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you early next week as we finish out our draft prep and get ready. We're less than 2 weeks away, and it's right up on us. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week.
Yep.